So value of one currency in terms of another is known as exchange rate, right? Now we know that every country in the world, right? Most countries in the world have their own currencies, right? Except for European Union, most countries in the world have their own currencies, right? So if we want to compare our currency value against another currency, that could be dollars, that could be pounds, that could be Indian rupee, that could be Bangladeshi taka, that could be anything, right? So we look at its exchange rate, right? So if we want to compare our currency's value in terms of any other currency in the world, we look at the exchange rate between two currencies. By definition, exchange rate is value of one currency in terms of another. Okay. Now, Zohan and everyone else, please pay attention, right? Now, you have to, first of all, on the exchange rate graph, you need to, first of all, think that from which currency perspective you want to make this graph, right? So if, let's say, in every exchange rate graph, there will be two currencies involved, as we know, right? Dollars, rupee, pound, dollar, whatever. Right? So if you think from Pakistan's point of view, right? So if you want to look at the local currency's perspective, which is rupee, so what first thing that you need to do is to have quantity of rupees on the x-axis. So whichever currency you are looking from, whichever currency's perspective you want to look at the exchange rate, so that currency would be always on the x-axis, right? Now, what is value of rupees? Now think about this. When I say what's the value of something, so in exchange rate, value of currency would be in terms of another currency. Are you following me? So what is value of rupee in terms of dollars or in terms of pounds or in terms of euros? So basically what we are capturing here is that how many dollars can each rupee buy? How many dollars? So this is simply speaking dollar per rupee. So how many dollars can each rupee buy? That's on the y-axis, and the quantity from which perspective you're looking at it from, right? So that is on the x-axis. Another way to remember this is that whichever currency you are making the exchange rate graph, whichever currency's perspective you are making the exchange rate graph for, so that currency would be on the x-axis, and that would be the second currency on the y-axis. That would be the second currency. So it could also have been, if we are looking at pounds and rupees, so then that would be pound per rupee, right? How many pounds can each rupee buy? So that is showing you that whether 1 rupee buys you 1 pound, half pound, 0.2 pounds, what, right? And it would always be the second currency on the x-axis. Easy? Zohan, any confusion? Right? So if you want to invert this idea, you want to look at from pounds perspective, right? Then it would be all reversed. How many rupees can each pound buy? And then instead of rupees on the x-axis now, you will have quantity of pounds, right? So that's simple. And then on this graph, the demand and supply of which currency would be added? On this graph, whichever currency you have on the x-axis, right? So that should be obvious. Whichever currency you have on the x-axis, that's the currency's demand and supply added on the graph, right? So downward sloping will be the demand for pounds, right? So you can write this down as downward sloping is the demand for pounds, upward sloping is the, so upward sloping would be your supply of pounds. Any confusion so far, right? Can you give me an example of appreciation too? Okay, you tell me how anything increases in value. What are possible ways through which any product, I'm talking about normal product in economics, right? What factors cause an increase in the value of a product, right? Rightward shift in demand, right? Now tell me what factors can cause increase in demand for currency, right? What factors would increase the demand for currency, right? So when anyone buys, like anyone meaning outer world, right? Other countries buy your product, that increases your demand for currency. When those foreigners are coming to your country for investment or tourism, that increases the demand for your currency, right? So appreciation happens when one of the two things happen, right? So appreciation of exchange rate, just like any other product in the market, either the value of currency would increase because there is high demand for currency, or there is lower supply. Either there would be higher demand for currency or lower supply for currency. These are the two factors that cause appreciation in exchange rate. Any confusion so far, right? Now we have already discussed what increases the demand for currency, right? So when foreigners are buying your products, right? When foreigners are coming to your country for tourism, when foreign businesses are investing in your country. So these are ways through which your demand for currency will increase. right? Okay, right. And what will cause a decrease in supply, right? So the other factor that causes appreciation of exchange rate is decrease in supply, right? So what would cause decrease in supply? So think about this. When do you supply your currency? Always think intuitively, right? So when do you supply your currency, right? You supply your currency when you are importing from other countries. Your nationals are going abroad for tourism. Your businesses are investing in other countries. So we have kind of inverted this, right? So just like they were demanding your currency when they were trading with you, I repeat, when other countries were demanding your currency because they were trading with you. Similarly, you demand their currency, but to demand their currency, what do you need to do? You need to supply your currency. Are you getting me? So you need to supply your currency to demand their currency, right? So you will supply your currency when you have to. Are you getting me? So when I'm going, just think about this. When you're going abroad, right? Can you spend in rupees? If you're going to UK, if you're going to USA, can you spend in rupees? No. So what will you do? You'll supply rupees and convert rupees into pounds or dollars or whatever, right? So that's when your supply increases. Similarly, when Pakistani students go abroad to study, when Pakistani businesses invest in other countries, when tourism, Pakistanis go for tourism abroad, right? So all these factors cause increase in supply. And when you reduce these factors, like less people are going abroad for tourism, less Pakistani businesses are investing abroad, less imports Pakistanis are, doing now. So all these factors will reduce supply of your currency, which means your currency will become stronger against the other currency, right? Now there was another question in the chat. Everyone clear, right? Abdullah, Khizr, Khatija, Zuhan, right? Is everyone clear on this? Okay. Another question that you have asked is, right, depreciation on exchange rate. So just reverse the example. So depreciation would be when demand for currency is lower and supply is more. Demand. So think about this. Why is Pakistani currency generally weak against most currencies in the world? Because our exports are not that much, which means the demand for our currency is not that much, and we import a lot, which because of which our supply of currency is a lot, right? Okay, right, got it, right. Perfect, right? So we good on this, students? Can we move on? Okay, so let's keep moving. So here's the past paper. This is for May, June 2019, right? So, right, this is May, June 2019, variant 2.2. Okay. Now, these are 3 essay questions. And as you know, out of 3 essay questions, you have to choose one. So how about we do this thing? We'll read all the 3 questions now, and then you will tell me, and whichever question has most votes. So I would want you to choose the difficult one, because easy ones you can do on your own. We'll choose the difficult one and then we'll do that in today's class. So first question says, explain how economists use the concept of elasticity to distinguish between inferior goods and necessary goods when consumer incomes change, right? So how economists differentiate between inferior and necessary goods when consumers' income change. 8 marks. B part to this question says, discuss how businesses might attempt to change price elasticity of demand for their products and consider which approach is most likely to be successful. Then question 3 says, distinguish between regressive and progressive taxes and explain whether you would use an income tax or a specific indirect tax to make post-tax incomes more equal, right? Okay, discuss whether subsidies on the production of all goods, all types of goods will lead to an improved allocation of resources. Discuss whether subsidies on production of all types of goods will lead to an improved allocation of resources. Then the last question here says, explain using examples what is meant by protectionism and show with the help of a diagram how export subsidies can be considered as a form of protectionism, right? Then the B part to this says, discuss the arguments that are used to justify protectionism and consider whether these arguments can ever be justified, right? So these are the 3 questions, right? Now, which of the 3? Question 3, okay? So we have 1 vote for question 3. What about other students? Right, which question should we go with? 2, 3, 4? Yeah, quickly. Right. Okay. Abdullah is saying 4. Fine. Okay. What about the remaining 2 votes? Quickly, students, just say it. I mean, we'll be doing one of the 3 questions anyways, and we can do the remaining later. So Khadija is saying 3, and now Khizr will be the deal breaker. Yeah, Khizr. Okay. Okay. So far we have 2, 3. Okay. So we have 3 votes for 3. So we will definitely do 4 as well. So if we have time in today's class, we'll try to do it today. If not, then definitely we'll do it tomorrow. Don't worry, right? But let's first do question number 3. Okay. Now have a look at this. Now question 3 says, distinguish between regressive and progressive taxes and explain whether you would use an income tax or a specific indirect tax to make post-tax incomes more equal, right? Now, first thing that I'm not starting off with the answer yet, but I'm just understanding how much you know, right? How much you know about this question, right? So there are 3 types of taxes. We talked about those types of taxes, right? So those are progressive, proportional, and regressive, right? So all taxes can be divided in. So here's the thing, let me not confuse you guys. Okay. So if you talk about type of taxes, so you will divide those into categories. First of all, direct taxes. So this is the type. I'll tell you there's type of tax and then there's nature of tax, right? So types of taxes are 2 types, direct taxes and indirect taxes, right? So can anyone of you tell me the distinction between direct and indirect taxes? So yeah, direct and indirect, right? So what's the distinction between the two? The distinction between the two, regressive taxes imposed on goods and services. In regressive taxes, low income people pay more and vice versa. That's correct, Zohan. So we are coming to the nature of the taxes, right? So what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to tell you that there are 2 things, right? So one is type of tax, right? Like now this might be a little difficult to explain, and then it's nature of tax, right? So nature of tax means that who is being affected? Who is being affected? Are the rich people being affected? Are the poor people more affected, right? Due to tax. That's what the nature of tax means, right? And the type of tax means which source is being taxed. Now, does this help you guys? Which source, like income source or the consumption, which source is being taxed? Are you getting me? So when we talk about the type of taxes, there are 2 types, direct and indirect. So direct taxes are the ones that tax your, right? Right, right, correct. Zwan, correct. Okay. Now, Khizr, Khadija, Abdullah, are you guys following me? So type of taxes mean that which source of income is being taxed, right? So when you talk about direct taxes are taxed on, direct taxes are taxes on income and wealth. I'll give you some examples, right? So income and wealth, when income and wealth are being taxed, those are direct taxes. Indirect taxes are, on the other hand, imposed on consumption, right? So when you go and buy something from a retail shop, right? So you will see in every country there will be GST, general sales tax, right? So that's an indirect tax. VAT, value added tax. So these are examples of indirect taxes. Easy, general sales tax, or simply speaking, sales tax or value added tax. These are indirect taxes. And direct taxes include income tax. When I earn any income, I have to pay income tax. Then there is property tax, capital gain tax, right? So all these other taxes which are not on consumption, I repeat myself, all these other taxes that are not on consumption, they are on income and wealth, and therefore they are direct taxes. Any confusion so far? Is everyone understanding? Right. So though you tell me, right? So ad valorem tax and specific tax are types of GST, right? So Zohan asked me that you hear a lot of this term, specific tax and ad valorem tax. So ad valorem tax and specific tax are part of GST. The only difference between, so the difference between ad valorem and specific tax, I'll tell you, don't worry, right? So specific indirect tax is when the amount of tax is fixed per unit. Is fixed by exactly, right? Easy. Students, Khizr, Khadija, Abdullah, are you guys following me? So specific indirect tax would say that regardless of how much the price is, I'll tell you what's happening in Pakistan right now. So back some time ago, I don't know, not this year, perhaps a year before this, government imposed 20 rupees tax on every packet of cigarettes. Now listen to me very carefully, right? So government imposed 20 rupees tax on every packet of cigarettes, regardless of the price, right? Right? So that is specific. Government did not say that, more expensive. It's not a percentage of the selling price. It's not a percentage. So no matter whether a packet of cigarettes is for 20 rupees or a packet of cigarettes is for 200 rupees, each packet will increase in price by 20 rupees because that's the amount of tax that the government has imposed. On the other hand, the ad valorem is a percentage. So that means it would be perhaps 10%, right? Or 15% or whatever, right? So if a packet was initially 100 rupees, right, before imposition of tax, now it would become 110 rupees, right? Because 10% is your tax imposed by the government. On the other hand, if previously something was 200 rupees, now that product would rise to 220 rupees because 10% of this is. So if you look at this, on this first packet, which was only 100 rupees, the amount of tax was 10. And on the second product, which was 200 rupees, now the price of each packet is 20. Easy. The packet price increased by 20 rupees. Any confusion so far? Right. Yeah, 65. Oh, wow. A lot, right? So nature of taxes, on the other hand, shows that who is being affected. Now, within that, when we talk about nature of taxes, so you have three types: progressive, right? Proportional and regressive, right? So progressive, proportional, and regressive, right? So we'll quickly discuss all three, but in the question, it's only asking us about progressive and regressive, right? Now think about this. Here's the thing. So all of your direct taxes, first let's understand what progressive is. Let's first understand what progressive is, right? Can anyone of you tell me? 14 billion rupees in dollars, 15 billion rupees in revenue from cigarettes. Wow, right? Yeah. Okay, now think about this. Progressive. Students, pay attention, please. Okay. Now, progressive is, right? Right. So progressive is basically greater the source of income, right? Greater the source of income, greater the tax rate, right? I'm not writing the full statements, right? Because I'm assuming you would know, but if there is still any confusion, you have to ask me, right? So progressive is that greater the source of income, greater the tax rate, right? Let me tell you. So in Pakistan and in most countries that I know of, right? Income taxes are progressive. That means what? That if someone is earning 50,000 rupees per month and someone on the other hand is earning 5 lakh rupees per month, right? So the tax rate on person earning 50,000 would be much lower, or vice versa. Someone who's earning more amount would be subject to higher tax rate. So what I mean in simple words, that let's say if someone is earning 50,000, let's say he's being taxed for 5%, right? So 5% of this goes to the government in the form of income taxes. If on the other hand, someone is earning between this income bracket, right? So let's say that guy would be paying 10% of his income, right? And then similarly, if someone is earning between this income bracket, right? So he would be paying even a higher rate of tax and so on and so forth, right? Now, this being said, you can tell by yourself problem of fiscal drag. I mean, yeah, that's correct. That your real incomes are not increasing, but your tax rates are increasing. So that causes fiscal drag. Yeah, more taxes being paid just because, nominal incomes are higher and not your real incomes are higher. Correct. Okay, now students, are you following me? Now, this being said, so you just tell me that which type of people will face more burden of this tax, right? So this guy is definitely, even though he's earning less, but he's better off because less proportion of his or lesser percentage of his income is taken away by the government in the form of taxes, whereas this guy is in bad position because, right, a bigger percentage of his income is taken away by the government, right? So rich people. Progressive taxes are more of a burden on the rich guys. Source of income increases, the tax rates increase. Now, when we talk about proportional are fixed rate of tax, fixed tax rate, right? Regardless of the amount, fixed tax rate, regardless of the amount earned, regardless of amount earned, right? So think about this. If government says that everyone in Pakistan will pay 20% of his income in taxes, then everyone is paying the fixed rate. Listen to me very carefully. If government says proportional, we are talking about progressive, we have already discussed. Higher the source of income, higher the, bigger the source of income, bigger the, higher the tax rate, right? Now for the proportional, it's a fixed tax rate, regardless of amount earned, right? So whether you earn 50,000 a month or you earn 5 lakh a month, right? Everyone is paying that fixed tax rate. Could be 10%, could be 15%, but whatever it is, it's fixed for everyone. Now, here's my question. Which type of people would it put more burden on? Proportional taxes we are talking about. So which type of people, progressive we know, progressive is more of a burden on the rich. But for proportional, what type of people would face more burden of this tax? Yeah, any idea, any guesses, right? Come on. No, right? So students, think about this. Just calculate the amount. So what is 10% of 50,000? 5,000, right? What is 10% of 5 lakh? 50,000? Yes or no? Right? Now the idea is that even though the tax rate is the same, but the amount of tax paid is more for rich. Amount of tax paid by rich is, right, more for rich people compared to poor people. Yes or no? Am I making sense? Right? So proportional taxes are also more of a burden on the rich. Proportional taxes are also more of a burden on the rich. Any confusion so far? Anything that's not clear, right? But not obviously, proportional taxes are burden on the rich, but not as much of a burden as much progressive taxes, right? So not progressive taxes are burden on rich, proportional taxes are burden on rich, but progressive taxes are still more burden on rich compared to proportional. Easy, because in this case, the rate of tax is also increasing. In this case, only the amount paid in tax is increasing. In this case, rate of tax is also increasing. I'm assuming that you have gone through these calculations, right? You do have a fair idea about that. If you don't, then ask me. I'll explain you how that works, right? Okay. Now comes in regressive. By the way, do remind me towards the end of the class, I'll show you something that you can use. And, I'll show you what you can do. Okay. In terms of revising, basically, how can you revise better for your, AS economics and all that outside classroom, right? Okay. Now moving forward, kids, regressive is all indirect taxes are regressive. How? I'll tell you. And regressive are burden on the poor. All indirect taxes are regressive and they are burden on poor. And they are burden, right? And they are burden on poor. Okay. Now think about this, students, right? Indirect taxes are those imposed on consumption. Indirect taxes are imposed on consumption. Now, how they work, let me tell you, right? Now, I go, right? Or let's say two people go to buy a packet of cigarettes. I mean, that's a demerit good. So let's not take that example because then you would be saying that, even if they're paying taxes, so it's their fault, right? But let's think about GST normally is not only imposed on on demerit goods, it can also be imposed on other normal goods. I repeat, it's not necessary that indirect taxes are only imposed on demerit goods. They're also imposed on normal products, which is kind of sad. Next time you go to a restaurant in Pakistan, and this would be true in other countries as well, you will see sales tax. So whatever the amount of bill you had to pay, on top of that, whatever the amount was, let's say if that was 10,000 rupees or whatever, right? So there would be a percentage of sales tax mentioned there, right? right? So that means you will be paying 1,500 on top of that, and therefore you'll be paying 11,500 rupees, excluding the tip, right? So that's the amount that you'll be paying to the restaurant, because out of this amount, 1,500 goes to the government, right, which imposed indirect tax, and the remaining amount goes to the restaurant, and whatever tip you pay obviously goes to the person who served you in the restaurant, right? Easy. You got on this, right? Okay. Now, indirect taxes can be imposed on any product, not necessarily demerit goods. Students, are you following me? Right. Okay. Now let's assume that could be any simple product, right? So groceries, right? Groceries, the normal fruits, vegetables, I don't know, bread, butter, milk that your parents buy. So in that country, whatever country we assume has, let's say, an indirect tax of 10%. So when you go going to buy groceries like basic eggs, bread, milk, you have to pay 10% on top of that in the form of sales tax, indirect tax or sales tax, right? Now there are two people, let's assume A and B, right? So A has an income of 100,000 per month. B has an income of 40,000 per month, right? So there are two people, and this is and this is their monthly incomes, right? Okay, 100,000 rupees per month for A, 40,000 rupees for B. Now, my question to you is, do you think, like, let's say the number of people in their houses is the same, do you think that this guy would be buying a lot more bread or butter or something, right? The basic food items compared to this, given the number of family members is the same, right? That's just a question for you to answer, right? Do you think that if you think about the basic food items, right, like grocery, like bread, butter, and things like that. So the rich guy, my question here is that, do you think that this rich person who's earning more will be buying a lot more groceries compared to that person who's buying 40,000? I mean, the basic food consumption that we need for a healthy life or a healthy diet is more or less the same. So if you assume that the two households have same income, right? So it would be fair to assume that both of them spend same amount, right? Right? Both of them would be spending same amount on buying groceries. Both of them would be spending same amount, right? A little more, perhaps. A little more, John, but I mean, I'm not talking about, going to movie theater. I'm not talking about some very big, entertainment kind of things, right? So basic food items. Think about the rice, or if you want to take it so basic, think about the rice consumption that, the two people are making, or the bread that they eat. I mean, that's a very basic human need, right? So everyone needs that. Roti kar liya, right? Roti in case of Pakistan, right? So coming back to the point, right? Both are paying 10%. So how much tax would he pay? How much tax would A pay on 2,000, 20,000 worth of grocery? 2,000 would be amount of tax. And similarly, since both are spending the same amount on groceries, so B would also be paying 2,000 rupees in the form of taxes. Confusion, students? Right? Okay. Now, this being said here, right? If you calculate, now listen to me very carefully, if you calculate the percentage of tax, percentage of income, sorry, if you calculate the percentage of income of A that he paid in taxes, and then you calculate the percentage of income that B paid in taxes, for which of the two that would be higher? So out of A and B, which person paid greater proportion of his income in taxes? That's a simple question I'm asking, right? Now, if the tax amount is the same, you have income more, and you have incomes mentioned for the two people. So if you calculate 2,000 as a percentage of his total income, which is 100,000, right, times 100, whatever that amount would be, X percent, right? And then you do the same thing for B, 2,000 he paid in taxes out of his total income of 40,000 times 100. So that will give you Y percent, whatever, right? You can do the calculation, right? So you can tell by yourself that if numerator has the same value, but denominator is bigger in this case, overall value of X will be smaller compared to the value of Y. The value of X will be smaller because denominator is bigger in this case, right, compared to Y. So that means that the rich person paid smaller proportion of his income in taxes compared to the rich guy. Sorry, compared to the poor guy. The rich guy pays smaller proportion, right? So the thing about regressive taxes and how they are a burden on poor, that is the point what I was trying to prove here, right? So regressive taxes, which are all indirect taxes, are regressive. I told you, which includes indirect taxes, right? Like sales tax and valorem tax. They are burden on poor because poor people are paying a bigger proportion of their income in taxes, right? Is everyone clear on this? Bigger proportion of their income in taxes. Right? Okay. Have we got on this? Right. Okay. Now, after all this lengthy discussion, right, let's go back and let's see what the question was asking for, right? Now we are doing question 3. The question said, distinguish between regressive and progressive taxes and explain whether you would use an income tax or a specific indirect tax to make post-tax incomes more equal. Now, I want every one of you to take a minute, think about this. So the explaining part is simple, right? We've already explained it, right? So what's the distinction between regressive and progressive taxes? I hope you will be able to explain, starting off with the types of taxes like direct and indirect, then talking about the nature of taxes, and then only explaining progressive and regressive. You don't need to explain proportional because that's not asked for. Then you tell that if you think of income tax and a specific indirect tax, I told you what a specific indirect tax is, which would make the post-tax incomes more equal. Now, to make post-tax incomes more equal, basically it means that if someone is earning same thing, if someone is earning 50,000 rupees per month, and on the other hand, someone is earning 500,000 rupees per month, right? So this guy is earning this much, and another guy is earning this much, right? So, right? So the question is that if government wants to reduce the gap, right? So right now there's a difference of 450 rupees per month, right? So that's the gap between the incomes of the two people. If so the government wants to reduce this gap, right? Income gap, post-tax incomes more equal, post-tax, after tax, making income more equal. So which of the two taxes, income tax or the specific indirect tax, do you think would help government achieve this target? Which of the two do you think would help government achieve that? That shouldn't be difficult. Quickly, I'm just trying to make sure that everyone of you got this. Yeah, let's see what your answers are. Right, so Zohan, are you doing something else as well? Which of the two, read the question and then comment. Explain whether you would use an income tax or a specific indirect tax to make post-tax incomes more equal. Okay, no worries, no worries. Okay, right? So which of the two would make your post-tax income more equal? Income tax or specific indirect tax? Now, if you think about specific indirect tax, we just saw that everyone is paying the same amount, right? So you go buy groceries, I'm a rich guy, I'm buying, right? I'm paying 2,000 rupees, let's say, in taxes. The poor guy is also more or less buying the same amount of groceries. He's also paying 2,000 rupees in taxes. But if you think about progressive taxes, as I just explained you, the more the income I earn, the more the income I earn or anyone earns, the greater, right? The greater the rate of tax, the greater the rate of tax, as I was showing you over here, right? So the greater the rate of taxes, right? So if you earn 50,000, you're paying, let's say, 5% of your income in taxes. If you're earning between this income bracket, you're paying 10%, and so on and so forth, right? Easy. Are we good on this? Students, any confusion? Anything that's still not clear? Right? Okay. Right. Okay. Now let's look at the B part, students. Right. So you have to explain this. After you've explained the first part, like regressive and progressive taxes, then it would be easier for you to, comment on this, that it's the income taxes that will make post-tax incomes more equal. Right. Discuss whether subsidies on the production of all types of goods will lead to an improved allocation of resources. Now let's quickly make a table. That do you think that providing subsidies on all, that's the key word here, providing subsidies on all type of goods would improve the allocation of resources? That's what the question says. So what do you think? So let's list, some arguments in yes, that yes, it will improve allocation of resources, and no, that it will not improve allocation of resources. So these are the two things we are talking about here. Yes, it will improve allocation of resources. No, it will not improve allocation of resources, right? Okay, so what do you think? What comes? I can think a lot of points on the no part, but yes is kind of difficult. Yeah. What do you think? Right? So firstly, on the no part, right? Where do subsidies come from? Like how government finances subsidies? Tax money, right? So the taxes that we are paying, right? That's financing our tax money, right? That's how we finance our subsidies. Okay, so the class is about to end. So let me rejoin with the same link. We'll quickly do some, we'll make the points of this question. We'll not do it in full form, but we'll quickly make a rough draft of what should be included in the answer, and then we'll stop for today, right? So rejoin with the same link.